I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, so we talked a little bit about there was this I mentioned earlier that there was this issue of censorship that I wanted to get to. So the other day, and shout out to Kamal's favorite white professor, Noam Chomsky, I got invited to sign on to a petition he has started that is going around to, I guess, left academic.
If was wearing this, I would be all over him.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
okay.
I was trying.
Yeah, sorry, I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I opened up a window, and all of a sudden, all that happened.
No, it's cool. I just wanted. I didn't have the screen. I wasn't sure where that was coming from. But this a petition going around in defense of an academic journal article that was published a couple of years ago that has since been, if not entirely pulled, republished with an apology from the. In fact, let me just pull this up here and show you. With an apology from the new heads of that particular publication, which is right here. Let me scroll back up. Oh, wait. Let me scroll. Wait, no. Oh, which one is that then? Hold on. My bad, everybody. Let me get the right one. I got it open in. There we go. Because what happened was at Glasgow University, in the E-Sharp journal, an article was published. Well, the article is here: Advocating Occupation, Outsourcing Zionist Propaganda in the United Kingdom by Jane Jackman. The article was published in 2017, peer-reviewed, published, good to go in the E-Sharp journal, Rise and Fall, but it was republished after one blogger in particular and some others picked up a critique that took on its own life. And what apparently, so as it says here, the new intro that the journal published says that this article does not meet those standards of scholarship. In particular, this article employs some discursive strategies, including a biased selection of sources, as well as the misinterpretation of data, which promote an unfounded anti-Semitic theory regarding the state of Israel and its activity in the United Kingdom. That is the essential claim against this article, which is itself an assessment of the way the Israeli lobby works to develop a grassroots groundswell in response to what they feel is the encroaching power and prominence of the boycott, divest, BDS movements, the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement. And what the article shows, I would argue that all articles are, at a certain point, all source selection is biased. But, and I'm certainly no expert on the subject. All I can say is that, again, from my starting point, and the reason why I'm happy to sign on to this petition is because especially once you've gone through the peer review process and an article has been published, there should be no need for there to be a response of this kind to claim that it's anti-Semitic, that it therefore doesn't rise to the level of scholarly, to levels of high scholarship, which they say it is important to be rigorous, well-balanced, and supported by evidence. But note that, well, you haven't read it, so I'll have to tell you, it is notable that in their summary, they do not offer any balance or support or evidence or any rigor in explaining why this article does not rise to the level of scholarship.
It's only because they said it was. This is
that's exactly the point.
Because they
said that's anti-Semitic, and therefore we need
because it's telling the truth about Zionism, and so you can't tell the truth about Zionism.
And listen,
otherwise you're being anti-Semitic.
I wouldn't offer up a disagreement with that. All I would say is I read the article. It seems to make a perfectly logical, well-supported argument that is critical of Zionism and critical of the way the Israeli lobby influences, in this case, the British government through grassroots groundswell that affects parliamentary decision and policy making decision, specifically in this case against the BDS movement. But my point is, it doesn't. If there is an argument to be made against it, let that argument occur in the way and with the same standard you're saying this article is itself not reaching. In other words, publish a peer-reviewed journal article that shows this to be a poorly done piece of work. Expose the article, and maybe by way doing it, if you want to, particularly if you're publishing elsewhere, that shows the flaws in the editorial process of this journal, or shows the flaws in logic of the author and their argument. But again, it's the same thing I was saying about vaccines and everything else. I am much more uncomfortable with censoring an argument that I am in disagreement with than I am in offering up a more logical response. Even in the case of my own work around buying power, when I recognize that I'm not operating on a level playing field. So in other words, I would rather, and maybe, and I'm open to this as a critique, maybe this is tactically, practically a flaw on my part. But my point is, I would rather win the argument on the merits of my logic and research regarding buying power than on the merit of people, even as buffoonish and lampoonish as I think many are in this, who support that argument, in saying that they should be censored. In other words, let them say what they say. Go and investigate their work. That's the whole point, ultimately, of my own. So that's the way I feel here. So anyway, that's why I was happy to sign on to this joint, even without claiming to be an expert in any way on the subject of Israeli policymaking or the entire Israeli-Palestine conflict. But anyway, but just very quickly, just real quick, just a couple points from the article here. They talk about, well, just how the Israeli lobby, as I said, influences British politicians through a groundswell. There's really one point that I just wanted to get to, so I'm just going to rush through these real quick. But and then they say here, the principal contention of this paper is that an Israeli state-sponsored strategy is focused on controlling public opinion in the United Kingdom. Again, you could say that's wrong. You could say that they don't prove their point. They offer their sources. They to me meet the basic standards, and I would understand why, even if you disagree with the article, why, even if you're a blind peer reviewer, which I sometimes serve as, and I have, and on the other end, have gone through the process of being blind peer reviewed, where even if you don't agree with what they're doing, they're meeting the basic marks for the standards of research. They're offering you their method. They're telling you their theoretical or worldview perspective and approach. So they're, in other words, they're acknowledging in many ways their bias. They are laying out their argument in an orderly fashion. So again, I mean, so they're even in this section here, criticizing the history of the claim of the new anti-Semitism. So again, which is being used against the very work of the BDS movement and the people that and the efforts being described in this article. So again, if you don't agree, break it down and explain in your own peer-reviewed, et cetera, and so forth and so on. Just as, which shouldn't be hard to do, given that the perspective that contradicts this one is much more widely supported and easily welcomed into any debate, public or academic, etc. but so anyway, I just wanted to point out from the perspective outside of the debate of censorship, just something that I think is very important from the politics of media and communications, that it is acknowledged. I just like this language here that the pro-Zionist, pro-Israel effort being described here is described in its own open title and or banner, as written here, as winning the communications battle for Israel. So again, understanding the political nature of communications and media, understanding the war that media and communication represent beyond other labels of brand, marketing, public relations, or or even entertainment. So as it says here, for me also, finally, in addition to grassroots social media interventions, there are a number of well-known public figures willing to use their celebrity to repeat selective discourses in order to reinforce the Israeli narrative. Obviously, this is something that we see happening all the time. To sell products, to sell policy, to sell buying power, to sell crypto. So it stands to reason it would be happening here. And then just very lastly, I like this part here because the author talks about Foucault. Michel Foucault is their sort of go-to thinker for how they're framing their argument from the beginning. So as they summarize here, in 1983, the year before his death, Foucault wrote that his life's work had been, quote, to create a history of the different modes by which human beings are made subjects of power. The discourse, and then recognizes, as she does here, the author, that the discourse knowledge paradigm is intrinsic to what is deemed to be true. Therefore, discourse constitutes an important weapon in the struggle for power. And again, discourse means all forms of communication, all forms of conveying message. Or ideas, so that it is a power struggle. It is something to be understood in that context. Certainly the pro-Zionist Israeli camp understands that. We should certainly understand that. And this author is certainly realizing that, finding that out herself once again, as she is being, if not fully censored, she's being sort of rebranded as I guess in this case, a published author of anti-Semitic literature. And which is logical from the perspective of their strategy, but that alone. So
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
It just goes to show the power of narrative. Very often supersedes all of those standards that you outline. Again, any critique of Zionism and any critique of Israel, valid or not, is going to be substantiated or not, whether it's peer reviewed or not, whether it's whatever it's substantiated in any of the metrics that folks say, arguments are to be judged. It doesn't matter, because they have a narrative that they're going to stick to, and they do it like without batting an eye. They don't, it's like if you say something critical, they'll call you anti-Semitic, and that's the end of it. And then if you say, well, can you support that? Or what did I say was anti-Semitic? They'll say that's anti-Semitic. Even questioning the fact that you're even questioning them is anti-Semitic. So they perfected this. I didn't know about this Foucault guy and that this person was a master behind it, but it makes sense. And it's right around that time, when Farrakhan, Minister Farrakhan was kind of put out there as being, the chief anti-Semite, and the fact that they doctored up one of his speeches, and took it out of context. And they did the same thing with Reverend Wright. Not necessarily. Well, yeah, he hit on Zionism, and he hit on 9/11 and so forth. So, and he talked about the Palestinians, and he gave a whole litany of things that justified that statement, "Goddamn America." But of course, all we saw over and over again was "Goddamn America." I actually had the privilege of being on a morning radio program at that time, where I actually played that whole sermon. It was only about, it's less than 45 minutes. And I had Billy Bob's calling up, talking about, oh my God, he was really preaching the word of God. I thought the media just lied. I knew they lied, but my goodness, they were sure enough lying. He was actually preaching the word of God about America, this and that. And that was just like, wow, that was shocking to me. But of course, excuse me, the mic fell down. Maybe they're trying to get me already. But needless to say, that program that I was running, and this was all around the time when Obama was running, obviously, because we're talking about Jeremy Wright. And needless to say, that program didn't last 6 months. But, it was fun while it lasted.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, anyway, you laid it out quite well. That was it. I just wanted to I was happy to sign that petition, and I really cannot stand that kind of stuff, whether it's the issue of Zionism, vaccines, buying power. I really don't care. I don't want people being censored, and I don't want people who are producing peer-reviewed academic research being censored by the academic community.
Yeah.
Put your argument together and prove them wrong. So,
even people you don't like, because
that's my point.
And you made that point over and over again. And this is what we were saying around the time when Trump was getting censored. We were saying that, you can't, they're going to come for you later. And Black people should know that, just being on social media, we've seen that. I think I'm lagging a little bit. But the last thing I'll say on that, in terms of that, is look at the ACLU now. Look at how it's reversing its whole mission now. And they're now pro-censorship, where before they would defend anybody, even Nazis and all kinds of people who were reprehensible. Everybody should have the right to be able to say what they want to say, as long as it's not, yelling fire in a crowded.
That's what I'm saying. There are already laws in existence that deal with certain forms of language. That's fine. And if people break those laws, let that become the issue. But censoring people, and by the way, I and I'm not wishing this, so I don't want it. And I know it can get horrific out there, but for the most part, the mute and block functions on social media work well. So you can make, so like if you don't want to see Trump folks, it's I don't know, to me it's very easy not to see him. I mean, even if you're going to engage social media, so like you just it can be, you can create your own little echo chamber, which maybe doesn't help with an analysis, but at least creates a situation where you don't have to force somebody off of a platform. You can just disappear them from your own engagement. But anyway, all right, real quick, before our guests get here and we get into the important work of political prisoners and what's being done, let me do another quick break and come back for a couple straggling stories real quick.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.